to the IAEA full account of the prior military dimensions of its nuclear program. It must stop enrichment, provide the IAEA with unqualified access to all sites throughout the entire country. It must end its proliferation of ballistic missiles, release all U.S. citizens, send support to Middle East terrorist groups, respect the sovereignty of the Iraqi government, and permit the disarming, demobilization, and reintegration of Shia militias. Also end its military support for the Houthi militia, withdraw all forces under Iranian command throughout the entirety of Syria. We must end support for the Taliban and other terrorists in Afghanistan and the region, and cease harboring senior al-Qaeda leaders. And the IRG could force support for terrorists and militant partners around the world. And 2, Iran must end its threatening behavior against its neighbors, many of whom are U.S. allies.
Well, he started off his speech trying to convince his audience of how bad Obama's deal was, claiming that its flaws put the whole world at risk, and arguing that the JCPOA only postponed Iran's development of nuclear weapons. And now Pompeo also promised unprecedented financial pressure on Iran, warning that sanctions will not change until Iran changes, and threatening that Iran will have to fight to keep its economy alive.
We will apply unprecedented financial pressure on the Iranian regime. The leaders in Tehran will have no doubt about our seriousness. These will indeed end up being the strongest sanctions in history when we are complete.
It's also worth mentioning that this economic pressure can only succeed if the EU also complies. However, the EU has already stated that it's satisfied with the existing deal, saying that more sanctions are unnecessary as it seeks to protect its companies that are doing business in Iran. But let's quickly break down some of his demands. Now, some of them had at least something to do with the previous Iran deal. For example, Pompeo demanded that Iran stop enriching uranium and never pre-process plutonium, and asked for access to all of Iran's nuclear sites. But these demands were not only part of the JCPOA, they were met by Iran, which was certified by the IAEA. Other demands Pompeo made had nothing to do with preventing Iran from acquiring nukes. These were random foreign policy demands, which included asking Iran to stop supporting Houthis in Yemen, demanding that Iran pulls out of Syria. But one highlight of the speech was when Pompeo accused Shia Iran of supporting Sunni extremist groups in Afghanistan. And apparently pressure will continue until Iranians change its government. So now America is blatantly telling the Iranian people what to do. Check out what he said.
At the end of the day, the Iranian people will decide the timeline. At the end of the day, the Iranian people will get to make a choice about their leadership. If they make the decision quickly, that would be wonderful. If they choose not to do so, we will stay hard at this until we achieve the outcomes that I set forward today.
So that could be interpreted as a call for regime change, which, unlike Pompeo's nuclear demands, wasn't part of the original deal. But all in all, it's unclear what the administration is looking to come out of this, but we'll just have to wait for reactions from the rest of the world.
Iran has already responded to Washington's demands, with President Rouhani warning America has no right to tell Tehran what to do. He went on to say that the world will no longer cave to Washington's bullying. Commenting on Pompeo's insistence that Iran withdraw from Syria, Tehran said its forces will stay there as long as needed to fight terror.
As long as there is the need, the threat of terror, and the Syrian government wants it, Iran will continue its support of the Syrian government. Let me underline that those who entered Syrian territory without the consent of its government are the ones who need to get out.
Well, experts told us Washington's confrontational stance could send the whole region spiraling out of control.
This speech by Mr. Pompeo, it means trouble. I mean, this aggressive stance and this lack of knowledge and carelessness of what could this actually lead to? Could it actually lead to more wars, more destruction? This is not the first time, actually. American administrations in the past have tried to actually destabilize Iran from the inside. Well, the problem with that is that we have seen during the past 10 years destabilizing governments in this part of the world, from Libya, in Syria, in various parts in Egypt, in Tunisia. These disruptions for the stability of these countries created more damage and more harms for the rule of law, for human rights, for human dignity all over the region.
We will be seeing that Iran will not trust the United States for years to come. And the result for those measures by the United States will bring more mistrust from the Iranian side. And this is not just the issue of Iran. The allies of the United States, on the other hand, even the Europeans, they cannot count on what the United States say. the Trump administration, regardless of what their allies in Europe were saying, they withdraw from the deal that the Europeans were supporting. I think it will be very hard for the United States to bring Europeans or other countries on board in order to support that maximum pressure that they are talking, or the historic sanctions they are talking about.